Have you ever had like an hour or two to spare and you thought about starting up a video game and then you thought about the hoops you'd have to jump through to actually get going and then you went, nah? You know, there's unskippable logos, fade in, press any key, fade out, and then the menu loads in and you can click load game and pick the one with the most recent date and you wait for it to load and then you can finally play. And I realized like logos and stuff can mask loading times in some games, I guess. But that's not the worst of it, is it? The worst of it is additional accounts on separate clients that you have to install and run in addition to the one that you're running the game on. I'm now so jaded I lose interest when I hit an additional licensing agreement, let alone the privacy agreement. I wonder if there's a statistically significant amount of players turned off by that. Anyway, I wanted to make sure there's none of that stuff in my game, at least if I can help it. So there's a short loading time for technical reasons, and then you can press start, you know. Now, barriers of entry aren't just a thing outside of gameplay, are they? Like, have you ever wanted to try out a new game real quick just to see what it's like, and then it hits you with unskippable cutscenes and exposition, and finally unskippable tutorials? So Slasher's Keep is a roguelike where the player is expected to restart multiple times in a newly generated dungeon, so I thought it's important they could get to the gameplay proper as soon as possible each time. So for tutorials, I have hints popping up that don't interrupt the game, which I thought is important because that kind of stuff gets hella frustrating, and you can turn them off at any point. Also, there's a cobweb at the first door that you have to destroy to pass. So the player at least has to know how to open a chest, pick up a weapon, open the inventory, equip the weapon, and then use it at least in a basic manner. Now, it's harder than you might think to get people to learn those controls in the first place. So first off, people tend to not want to read. Like, I don't want to read. It's a video game, not a book. So I added animations and pictures of keys and that go up and down, and now the screen is kind of cluttered, which is another problem because apparently the more information you put on the screen, the less information people want to take in, at least at first glance. And then there's another conversation about the lowest common denominator in terms of gameplay comprehension and established conventions of the genre, you know. And then I also have two kinds of special attacks in the game that were harder to convey. One is a heavier kind of swing that you can perform by holding down the attack button and then releasing it once the wind-up is complete, which is very simple, but if you don't know that you can do it, you might never try. And the other one is even simpler. You just hit F and you can swing your inventory sack at the enemy, which you can use to push them backwards into, say, spikes or a fire pit or chasm, and that'll kill them instantly. So you can see how that would make the game easier. The thing is, you didn't have to know them to progress. It would just be harder and more tedious, which is what some people told me the game was like for them. So I took a page out of, I think, Dark Souls' book, and I put a little mini-boss at the end of each first dungeon floor, and you can only defeat him by smacking him into spikes with your inventory sack. And he has the key to the exit, so you have to defeat him to pass. And to illustrate the mechanic further, I also gave him an inventory sack of his own, and he tries to smack you into spikes as well, which won't kill you instantly, but do some damage. So now you could fumble your way through the first level of the game, but by the end of that, you would have to learn how to hit F. And now you might say that's overkill for something so simple, but the loot goblin can also spawn in different places in the dungeon later on, just as a little bit of bonus loot. Like, you know, the inspiration for it, which came from Diablo and Golden Axe. Now, there are other aspects to the game that were essential and hard to communicate, so it's a tough gig tutorializing, you know? Like, you can't know for sure how patient players will be with your game and to what extent they'll go, I must be missing something here, versus the game is missing something. You know? Anyway, here's an ad for my game. Slasher's Keep is a first-person roguelike with a focus on melee combat and loot. It has randomly generated dungeons with orcs, mole rats, and other monsters to fight, lots of loot to find, and a drag-and-drop weapon crafting system. I made it all by my lonesome, and it's available for PC on Steam.